for us to move on to our next session.
Absolutely. And what we're going to talk about is the world that seems saturated with strategy documents and also transformation roadmap. Execution has now emerged as a true differentiator, particularly in highly regulated sectors such as healthcare, life sciences. Execution that actually determines the timelines, the regulatory approvals, and also the patient outcomes, and ultimately institutional credibility. So what we are talking about is innovation without any discipline. Delivery remains theoretical, but also breakthroughs that are validated only if they are implemented at a scale. So let's do not waste any time, because we already have our esteemed panelists joining us here on the stage. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Peyton Howell, Chief Executive Officer of PAREXEL, in conversation with my colleague, Sumita Karir, who is the Deputy Editor of ET Now.
Surprise, surprise. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking the time out and being here with us at the ET Now Global Business Summit. It's an honor to have you. Let's first begin with the kind of disruptions that everybody is talking about. In fact, it is the theme at GBS this year. We've heard from manufacturing companies, we've heard from technology companies, telecom companies, but give us a sense of how these geopolitical disruptions, which have led to supply chain disruptions as well, and country-specific regulations, are really shaping up businesses, particularly your business. If you could get us an insight on that.
Yes, well, thank you for the opportunity. I lead PAREXEL, so we run global clinical trials around the world. 22,000 employees globally, but 6,000 in India. So critically important backbone for us. And I will tell you, India has not been disruptive. India is growing and really thriving in terms of clinical research, but we have had to manage a wide range of disruptions, particularly because of regulatory uncertainty. When you think about the challenges in the United States, when you think about the wars that we've had in various countries, all those impact global clinical trials that we run. So it has been a challenging time, but I do remain an optimist. Like some of the prior leaders, we're seeing a number of things come to the table to help us manage disruption. AI and technology, our hub centers actually out of India actually have supported global clinical trial business continuity, and we expect that to continue. So I'm definitely an optimist about how we're using today's innovation framework to help us to execute for the future.
Right. So since you mentioned about AI and, in the previous session as well, we were hearing from Ananth Maheshwari, who gave his perspective. Do you think AI is going to sort of lead to job losses? Because we have seen in several companies, so many of the roles have completely gotten washed out. They are completely sort of out of the jobs scenario. In your opinion, what are the three trends to watch out for as far as AI and the jobs market is concerned?
Yes. It's certainly early, but what we're seeing is actually opportunities from a jobs perspective, elevating the roles of what we do in healthcare. In healthcare, the human remains central to that patient experience, so that doesn't change, but the support systems, the accuracy, the ability to plan and really look at how you approach a clinical trial, for example, or how you approach healthcare delivery, really leveraging AI. So we actually believe it's an opportunity. I will tell you, since I'm here in India, I think it's an incredible opportunity here in India because of the strength of talent we have in country. And we've seen our team in India lead many of the innovations that we're now deploying globally in clinical research and safety.
Okay. Could you give us some examples when you say that some of the examples which are sort of discovered here in India, which are created in India, are
Certainly.
being employed all across the globe?
Yeah, I'd love to share one example. My head of India is in the room, and his team here that leads a global safety business was able to take some of our technology and embed it into workflow to automate some of the more routine tasks. And I think that's the real opportunity in healthcare, is to be able to elevate all of those roles. So that's a simple example, but a really important one in changing the speed and accuracy and quality of what we do.
Right, speed, accuracy, and quality, and of course, credibility is going to be important in this age of AI, Peyton, as of course companies deploy AI. But let me ask you a follow-up question. When you essentially talk about AI, where do you really see sort of AI being deployed in the healthcare segment, especially beyond chatbots, beyond interactive agentic AI?
for a healthcare company, we're in a highly regulated environment. So we're still early for assessing that, but I definitely think it's an opportunity. But I think it would be remiss to not make sure we mention that the human is at the center of everything that we do. So it is not replacing that. In fact, it's really emphasizing that scientist at the center of everything. And I think when you think about AI, it's going to be all about execution, our theme here, as well as making sure you preserve your culture and purpose. And so that's where we've been very focused, because we need everyone to know not just what they're doing and executing, but the why, how it touches a patient, how it could impact patient safety, and how it really supports the outcomes of what we're doing.
Absolutely, and that is going to be important. How it really touches patient safety. Safety and credibility is definitely very important in your sector, and how AI enhances that or sort of, leads to that waning off, that remains to be seen. But we have time for, I think, one more question, and I'll ask you about, the geopolitical aspect that we spoke about, the disruptive aspect that we spoke about. Now, what we're seeing is that globalization is sort of, waning away, and countries are moving more towards protectionist attitudes, right? So how can companies then collaborate with companies in other geographies whilst at the same time protecting their interests?
Right. Well, we're a global company, so it's literally our job to help companies mitigate that risk as we see some of the more nationalist type regulatory reforms. I think that's one of the areas that we really have to step back, because in clinical research, the accuracy of what we do is impaired if it is not representative of the globe. So we certainly need patients that participate in clinical trials that represent all of the globe. And that's actually one of the reasons I'm here this week in India, is really trying to support and expand the number of clinical trials that are accessed here in India.
And with that, ma'am, it's time's up, but thank you very much for joining us for this very fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.